is one of those books, or one of my books, where I'm playing with various conventions of genre, and it sort of pretends to be a thriller, but actually moves in some very different ways. And I always feel a bit sorry for if any readers turn up and buy this book who are just looking for a good straight thriller. Some sort of conventional narrative traction to get me through it, and I assume that the reader needs the same. But in the process of the journey, whatever the meaning of the piece is going to be emerges for me. And as long as I sort of keep one hand on the plot device that's taking me to the end, and do my best to make the resolution satisfying. The period during which this book was written was in the United States really quite a nightmarish, dark period. And I think that sense of lightness and harmony and people being able to move easily, it could be sort of pushing back against the darkness of that moment, to be able to have character like Tito, whose essence is essentially that he can walk through walls, that he can cross borders. He probably doesn't show up on surveillance cameras, and it's like a fantasy. It's like a fairy tale of freedom that was written in a period where everything was all going away. It was almost a kind of visible mist of fascism. That was it was very nasty, and this crazy kind of superstitious religion of the war on terrorism and all of that. So this book was written in some way as like an act to counter that, like present some opposite side of the mirror. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I for instance, actually believe that Al-Qaeda all by themselves knocked down those towers. I'm kind of a connoisseur of conspiracy theories. Like I'm familiar with a lot of them. I've read a lot of them, and what I believe accounts for the popularity of conspiracy theories is that they are comforting in their simplicity. That having some idea that the world is run by the Freemasons or the Bilderbergs or Jewish bankers or whoever is comforting to us, because the pattern is so much simpler. And obviously there are lots of things we don't know, but I'm reasonably confident that the submerged part of the iceberg doesn't involve extraterrestrials. You don't actually have to be very underground to imagine people like this. I mean, people like Brown is completely based on sort of eavesdropping on web forums where people who are sort of like Brown or want to be, dream that they could be like Brown, hang out. And so he's like kind of a nastily accurate depiction of a certain kind of consciousness. I think that readers enjoy imagining that the author steps, yeah, that the author steps back from the text and goes through a sort of conscious and deliberate process of invention. But if on those rare occasions when I attempt to do that, the results are always very poor. So I'm working immersed in the material, and a lot of it is very instinctive. There's at least on the first draft, when I go back through the material, then I'm trying to have some distance and be a bit more rational. I drive without I drive a Volks Passat with no GP, with no GPS, and live in a sort of upper middle class 1920s suburb, sort of inner suburb in Vancouver, and work in a basement office and have an extremely quiet and orderly existence for the most part. My 20-year-old self probably didn't expect to reach 40, so you know, I don't think I ever, when I was 20 years old, the idea that I would be alive in the 21st century would have seemed slightly fantastic. And, you know, to be alive in the 21st century and have, like, my own teeth and be walking around and looking at things, it's really very interesting. That's one of the reasons I think I've been doing these recent books, is that I've actually got genuine 21st century material to work with after a whole career of working with imagined 21st centuries.